Hello, my viewers. Welcome once again to Hugar Social Academy. We are presently living in that generation where every country want to develop himself as well as country strives very hard to make the people of that country to be developed. Keeping this in the mind, every country tries their best to develop a good environment throughout their country, and this environment only it will come when the country explodes. If the country doesn't explode and the country if remains with the things which are been available within his country itself, then there is a very less chances of the development. Every country is not self-sufficient. Every country has to depend on another country. Like for the oil, India depends on the Arab nations. Arab nations for the other requirements depends on the India as well as the Asian nations or any other nations. In this way, every country are dependent on each other. None of the country is self-sufficient. In such cases, it becomes very important that in what way we develop the relationship with the other nations. And here, when we are talking about the relationship, here the major things comes in the mind related to the what type of country maintain the foreign policy. See, India, neighboring countries, they all are referred as a foreign nations. To them, India is referred as a foreign nations. But every nation will prepare his policy. As I said, none of the country is self-sufficient. Every country has to dependent on each other. But if the government maintains a proper relationship with the other nations, then automatically he can fulfill the needs of the home, needs of his public also, and the need of the country also. In such cases it becomes very important that country how they are going to make a foreign policy. Okay, now when we are talking about the foreign policy, here we have to focus on the what type of foreign policy is being prepared by the India. We call it as a Indian foreign policy. So, today in this session, we are going to learn from the political science topic regarding the chapter called as Indian foreign policy and the global challenges which are being there. Indian foreign policy as well as the global challenges. India's foreign policy and global challenges. So this is what our chapter Indian foreign policy as well as what as well as the global challenges we are going to study in the way in the present topic. Okay. Now when there are two words are there. One is Indian foreign policy, another one is global challenges. Now when we say global challenges it is related to India and all the number of nations which are present in the world. And another side, if we talk about Indian foreign policy, then it is particularly related to the India. This foreign policy of India will decide or will say that what type of relationship do India is having with the other number of nations. Now, the first word, what it's a India, we can understand it is about the country called as India. Now, another word is related foreign. Foreign it refers to the next number of nations which are near to the India. Now, policy here refers to the it's a course. Okay, it's the action of the government. It's a course or action of a government related to any of the works or development of the relationship with the other nation. We call it as a policy. We call it as. Now here major what we are going we should understand that what does this foreign policy it means. What does this foreign policy it means? As I said you that foreign policy is very important for the development of any of the nation. If foreign policy is good, everything is been good. We call Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru as a father of Indian foreign policy. As after the independence, right? He was the one who tried his best to develop a good relationship with a number of other nations. As India has India has to face with many number of challenges internal, apart from the external. Internal, he has to face many of the challenges which we have studied in our earlier previous topics, like in the form of communalism, regionalism, poverty, illiteracy, economic inequality, status of women, many more number of things were been there. Okay, so those were the number of things were be there which Indian during that time it was been fought. Okay, now here we are in the 2024, almost near about 75 years we have crossed of the independence. Now after completion of 75 years of the independence, right, what type of foreign policy do we are having with the other nations? Now here foreign policy refers with the dealing with dealing with other nations, dealing with other nations. Okay, we call it as a foreign policy, dealing with the other nations. Now in when we are saying dealing with other nations, they are in a different form according to the requirement. Now we know very well that we are having near about 8 neighboring countries are there, and these all neighboring countries which are with us, whether they are having whether they are good with us or they are not good with us. Who are good with us, in what way we have to go. Who are not good with us, then what type of relationship we have to develop. This has to be kept in the mind by the whom, by the government. And government always works related to that, keeping in the mind of what, to have a proper foreign policy on the basis of this one. And moreover here one more thing it should be in our mind, that what are those factors which determine regarding the foreign policy. Just I can't make a foreign policy with the other nation. Now when we talk about country called as India, it's a geographical, it's a political, it's socially, it's economically, right, it's a demography. These all factors it determines regarding the what type of foreign policy has to be maintained. Okay, these are very important now, like which we said, politically, economically, socially, demographically, geographically, we have to observe it, right? Now being having a this much of big country, it doesn't mean that all sort of abundant things are been available with us. So these all things has to be very properly, it has to be observed, keeping that in the mind. In 3 stages it has been what it has been mentioned. And that the first common factor, what he says, that it talks about the common common factors. Common, what it is, factors. Now what type of common factors we are been having here, let us learn one by one. Indian foreign policy also shaped by the various subjects or various aspects. Now, factors which are determining, as I said, there are 3 factors are there. One is common factor, one is internal factor, one is external factors. When we talk about internal factors, now see, unity and sovereignty of the nation is very important, right? If a country has to move strongly, it becomes very important that there should be a proper unity in the country. If there is a unity, then there is a strength. If there is a strength, with the help of that strength, with the help of that power, we can tackle any of the situation. And sovereignty of the nation, right? When we talk about sovereignty, it refers to related to ruled by the whom, by the people. India, like a country where democracy is being followed, where the rule will be there of the whom, of the people. By the people, there will be a structure which will be framed. On the basis of that structure, what our government performs. So sovereignty of the nation is important. Interdependence, it's a common factor, it's related to every country. It is, these things happens. Interdependence, as I said, no country is self-sufficient. It's about the protection. It's a protection of the vision of the country from the whom, from the encroachers. In the same way, when we come to the internal part of, then it's a geographical location of the nation, that also matters a lot. India's geographical location, if you talk, it's quite very different. Half of the area is covered with the land boundary, half of the area has been covered with the water. Okay, it's totally different. Size of the population, we very well know that India is now first populated country in the world, it has become now. So even on the basis of that, work has to be done. Military aspects is more important, it's because this is a military which helps in the way in any spot of the uh, uh, conditions which arises internal. And external factors, when we talk now, international conditions that has to be managed very properly. Now, with which country, what type of you are going to have a business relation with the international organization. Many number of organizations have came forward. You might be knowing that that 19th century, which has faced two big wars, which is called as a first world war and second world war. After that, the many political system, economically, lot changes, geographic also lot changes we have been seeing. So the organization which have came forward under the belt of UN or United Nations organization, now what type of good relationship you are going to develop with those organizations. Global public opinion quite very plays a very important role. Okay, so in these three forms, what it is that our foreign policy it determines. Okay, so these are the nothing but common factors, internal factors, external factors. These are the things which talks or which determines the factors related to what type of relationship we have to develop with the other nations. So, and when we understand these all things, then only what we can do, we can go and we can prepare a proper foreign policy of this country called as India. And yes, definitely present day Indian foreign policy is quite very good foreign policy. Now this Indian foreign policy, if we look over, we can divide, to understand very properly, we can divide this foreign policy regarding India into three parts. One part from the period of 1947, soon after the independence, soon after the independence, to up to the 1947 to up to the 1967 to 71 part. Another part after 1970 to the period of 1990 periods. Okay, and then the third part, it's of the present up to 2024. On in these things, in these number of decades, the different changes have been taken place regarding the foreign policy. Somewhere we got a good benefit of it, and somewhere we have lost, or we were being cheated by the other nations. So let us understand three different stages of the vision of our foreign policy. Three different stages of our foreign policy. One by one, we will study over it. So Indian foreign policy is been divided into what? Or divided, or we can understand it properly into three different phases, we can say. But before understanding those three phases, we have to understand that from where did this foreign policy begin? Now, when we look back towards our history, we can understand that this was a period, it began from the period of 1925 onwards, where our forefathers, they created a separate wing for the making of the foreign policies. Okay, now 1925, before if we talk, we were having an example of 1914 to 1918, the First World War which took place. And during that time, India, which was ruling on this, sorry, during that time, on India, the British who have been ruling on this country. Okay, now after 1918, as it was promised by the British, they didn't given us the freedom, right? They said us, but they didn't given us the freedom, which caused what it is that from 1925 onwards, now Indian National Congress, which was established in the period of 1884, okay, and as a congress which started from the 1885 onwards, this congress, Indian National Congress, it created a separate wing related to the Indian foreign policy. And then later after that, Second World War took place 1939 to 1945. The Second World War took place 1945. UN was being established, and 1947 we were being given what? Independence from the clutches of the British. So at the time when India got its independence, it was Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru who was being chosen as the Prime Minister of India. So here in the three category it is being divided. Now, evolution of Indian foreign policy we can properly understand in this three part. First part, Jawaharlal Nehru Indian phase from the 1947 to 1959. Okay. Now, when India got independence, during that time there was a big challenges in front of India. So, during the time of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, many the good action was being taken related to the making of the foreign policy. We call Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru as the father of Indian foreign policy. Now, during this part, it was been during this time it was been found that India tried to make developed a good relationship with a number of nations. We moved with some sort of policy like non-alignment policy. We moved with the India and China in the name of Panchsheel principles. Okay, and during the time of 1949, it was the Jammu and Kashmir issue which reached up to the way up to the UNO, and peace was been established in the country called as India and between the home between the Pakistan. Okay, Panchsheel principles, non-alignment policies, eye to eye policies, Jammu and Kashmir issues were being found during the time of 1947 to the period of 1959 during this period, right? So here the way of moving with the other nations was totally it was been different, as we were also having some of the internal issues were being there where government stressed more on solving the internal issues compared to the which and toward the external. But how come it was been what it was been strongly opposed? Okay, so as I said, non-alignment policies, it made us to what to not to join to any of the powerful blocs. During that time the world was divided into two blocks. One was led by United States of America, one led by the Russia, right? At that time we remained outside from those powerful blocks. Moreover, during that time apartheid policy, the differences or discrimination in the name of color, black and white, even regarding that it was being opposed. We opposed the colonialism rule, where colonialism, the best example is the British itself, British who ruled on the country called as India, and whichever the places he was been having, he called it as a, his colony. Okay, we were against the colonialism rule. Even we were against the imperialism, which refers to a strong nation using its power on the that nation which could not able to stand in front of him. Okay, so we were against the imperialism also, imperialism, communalism, apartheid, non-alignment policies, Panchshila principles. These all we have seen in the way from the period of 1947 to the period of 1959. And then small little bit of changes. It was phase of strategic realism. Okay, strategic realism. Why strategic realism is even seen saying that? It's because after 1959 onwards, we have seen that there were many changes were being found in the way in the country called as India. The policy which was been developed by the India, like for example, India and China signed an agreement which was called as a Panchshila principles. Okay, in the name of Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai. But in the year 1962, we had a war. We had a war, India China war. And the war was related to it's because of India gave shelter to the Buddhist leader called as a Dalai Lama. Dalai Lama was being protected by the India and China, who broke this foreign policy, and sudden attack was being done by China. From there onwards, there is no statement or concept like Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai, and today India and China are enemy. In another phase, if we talk, we will get to know that India and Pakistan they had a continued war, 1965, 1971, where during the time of 1965 and during the time of 1971, right? Yes, we defeated to the Pakistan, but Pakistan who raised continued his voice against whom, against the India. 1971, during the time of Indira Gandhi, when she was in prime minister, she made the East Pakistan to be liberated from the Pakistan, and East Pakistan was being made as a Bangladesh. And present day, you are knowing that what is the condition of the Bangladesh. So that happened, and after the Indira Gandhi, now it was the next. It was the Rajiv Gandhi who came to the power. But during the time of Rajiv Gandhi, the issues like of Sri Lanka, right, LTT organization, there the problem it arose. Moreover, during the time of after Rajiv Gandhi, PV Narasimha Rao, who came to the power, during that time also it was being found that many crushes were being aroused. Now these all things which shows what it is that in the period from 1959 to the 1991, 1959 to 1991, many political changes have been taken place. Now, as I was saying, 1965, it was after the Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru that India once again turned, sorry, Pakistan once again turned his attention towards India and tried to attack on us. And during that time, Lal Bahadur Shastri, the Prime Minister of India, who gave a strong response to the Pakistan, and he was being defeated. He even opposed to the United States of America, who was having a lot favor towards the Pakistan. These things it moved on during the period of 1959 to the 1991, which where we had near about three wars and other internal problems that was the different issues. Okay, these things it was been happen, and after that there was again the phase third phase. It is economic experiment phase. It is now economic experiment phase. Why we are been saying that? Because of the Indian foreign policy, which was been changed year by year, decade by decade. There was a lot of changes. We have seen that, right? India now it decided to move outside of the country. It decided, right? It decided to take its business from the one nation to the another nation. He thought of the globalization, liberalization, privatizations for the growth of the economy. And from the PV Narasimha Rao, from the Prime Minister of India to the present Prime Minister Narendra Modi, up to him, right? We are seeing that the foreign policy of the India regarding the economy part, it has been changed. And this is the reason today we are the fifth largest economic country in this world. There is a lot of changes we have seen, right? Today Indian economy is reaching to its high stage. We are competing with those nations which call themselves as the developed nation, like China, America, some of more European nations, right? They are quite very developed. But Indian economy being having a this much of population also, Indian economy is rising very fast. And this is why it's because of globalization, privatization, liberalization, and many other government reforms which are been there. These reforms made India to be reached to highest position as a economy. And today we are very proudly we are saying that. And even the government also says soon we are going to make it to third position. So if such things if it goes on, yes, there is a big changes in the way in the country. This is the reason where foreign policy plays a very important role. We have to work according to the present situation. The government works according to the which one present situation. So these all years it was been found lot of changes was been found among the number of among the country, which made what it is that phase by phase there was a lot of changes. And even every government from the period of 1947 to the present 2024, every government worked hard towards the development of the economy of the nations, right? In other Furthermore, foreign policy, it even decides the strength, the power of that country, the strength and power of that country. And today we know very well that today India is being in such a position where the world is ready to listen the voice of the India compared to the other nations. Many nations tried our country. Many nations tried to make our country to go down. But India, it rised like a raises of the sun, and it is now on that position where world bows its head in front of whom, in front of the India. Moreover, there are some principles are also given regarding the foreign policies. Let us learn regarding the principles of Indian foreign policy. Now, India's foreign policy is totally dependent on these number of things. Okay. Now, what Indian foreign policy want to say to us and want to say to the home to the world. Now, when we go with the principles of Indian foreign policy, we can understand that Indian foreign policy is on the base of opposition to colonialism. As I said you that. Okay. Now, if you particularly talk about our country called as India, we very well know that many number of nations European nations came to our country, and all the European nations they tried to rule on the way on the country called as India. And at last, it was the British who ruled, and British went up to 1947. He ruled, and all the places which he occupied, it was converted into colony. Okay, India, how come it had its struggle, which made what it is that British has to leave this country. In the same way, many number of other nations were there, which were in the hands of some other nations. So India, soon after the independence, not only he remained up to himself, but even made the world to know that the country should be freed from the clutches of the other nation. So it totally opposes to the colonialism. So there should be no colonial rule should be there. So India stands behind those nations which are under some other nations to make those country to be independent, like how they made their country to be independent. Okay, another side, it's opposition to imperialism, he says. Now, this imperialism speaks related to, right? Imperialism is different compared to compared to the colonialism. Now, in the imperialism, the strong nation, it will exploit to the nation which is in a need of it. Now, after 1945, when the Second World War took place, after 1945, many nations who were the part of the World War or who were not the part of the World War. Those who were the part of the World War, yes, they were also in a loss. Who were not the part of the World War, they were also in a loss. So the small nations who wanted to develop themselves, it was been found that the strong nations tried to exploit them, not by occupying that territory, but by putting the strong conditions regarding the finance. They made those country to listen what they want to make the policy, which caused what it is that many of the nation for the development purpose, when they joined the hands with those strong nation, they cheated them, which caused what it is that it become very hard to overcome from the financial situation. So India opposes and India support to those all nations who want to develop. So this was imperialism. Opposition to racial discrimination. When we talk about racial discrimination, we very well know that it's a apartheid policy which was being followed. So we India do not support for the apartheid policy, as this policy describes regarding the discrimination between the white as well as the black, and India like a country, African like a country, African nations where there was a too much of differences was being made in the name of racism. And if we talk about India, even in the India also in the name of casteism, right, in the name of religion. So these discriminations which are been there, India totally opposes in his country also, and even India opposes to wherever these things are been what it is being followed. So regarding racial discrimination, India opposes. Policy of non-alignment, which, right, now this policy says what it is that India is there with all the country, and India is also not there with those nations who try to call India for the violence. For the violence, India is a country which totally stands on the peace. So India never enters into any sort of such wars. He is away from that. Okay, so when it was talk related to the powerful blocks joining the powerful blocks after the 1945, as I said, one block calls as which was of United States of America, and one block which was of Russia. And when India was being asked regarding the alignment, India rejected it, and he moved with a non-alignment policy. He didn't become the part of USA, nor he become the part of Russia. Okay, he separated from the violence. So even policy of non-alignment, priority was being given for the progress of African and Asian countries, as these African and Asian countries since from the long ancient time were being ruled by the different European nations. Now here India supports to the development of African as well as the Asian countries. India in support, and India even urges the world, the powerful nation, to help to those nations which are in the need of it. So India stands or give the progress for the development of African as well as the Asian country. Moreover, support for disarmament, it is related to the weapons. And when we go with the number of powerful nations, every nation is having the nuclear weapons. And that is an example of Second World War, where America used two nuclear weapons which destroyed the big two cities of Japan, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and ended or disturbed the life as well as the property. So here, India strives very hard to reduce the bombs, the such bombs which can destroy the life from the earth. It opposes. It is not in a favor of increase of the weapons. He is in a favor of decrease of the weapons. It's because only decrease of the weapons, not uses of the harmful weapons, can only save the life of the people who are living on this earth. It doesn't just talk about the India, it's related to all the number of nations also. So disarmament is very very essential. So India support to those nations which follow the policy called as a disarmament. Support to the last point, support to United Nations, UNO and world peace. Now we very well know that UNO came into the power in the period of 1945, and before 1945 world has seen two big wars in the name of First World War and Second World War. And after the World War, the condition of many of the countries have been become weaker. India was also in stage where India's condition was not too strong, as India itself was fighting for the freedom purpose. But India, who follow on the path of Buddha, okay, which speaks related to the peace, India never moved with the word called as a first use. India always remained back, as India do not make disturbance among the number of nations. India always came forward to solve the issues related to the, whether it is maybe related to himself itself, or it may be related to the international issues it may be there. So India always stand for the world peace. India plays a major role for maintaining a peace among the where among the world. So these all are the principles of which one, and principles of the Indian foreign policies are. On the base of this foreign policy, India works with the vision with the other nations, and always tries very hard to develop a good relationship among the number of nations. In our next session, we are going to learn more related to the what are the global challenges are were been there, and India how he has been tackling with the global challenges. Let meet in the way in our next session. And as always, I say that until and unless the whole video or will be not watched, the doubts can't be made clearly. It can be solved. So from the starting to up to the end, the whole video, if you watch it, then only the topics will be cleared. So and at last, don't forget to like, subscribe as well as comment regarding any of the other topics is been needed to be said to you.